Muhammed Basel Taie, prefecto, filosofia do curso, Kelam, case of Oturum meşhuri. Oturum arkadaş üzerine tebrik sunacaklar. Zaten vaktimiz geç kaldı. Kendilerine
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillah. Vessalatu vesselamu ala Resulillah Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ve men wala. I would like to thank the organizer of this symposium. It's indeed a beautiful occasion to meet many people here on such a very important subject. I should I should also say in the beginning that what I'm going to present is slightly different from the abstract given at first. I was trying actually at first to discuss atomism, but then I decided not to do that, rather to give the subject in more broad aspects, since I found that we need detailed studies in order to affirm what I'm going to say. Philosophy and Kelam. Philosophy has its own principles, concepts, and methodology that makes it a consistent system of thought. Kelam has its own principles, concepts, and methodology too, that makes it another consistent system of thought. But we have different resources and different methodology. In philosophy, resources is taken from nature as it stands. But in Kelam, it is the revelations. And some modern scholars have really noticed that. For example, Basel mentioned this clearly, and also let the William Crick has mentioned that by saying that the main difference between a mutakallim, practitioner of Kelam, and the philosopher, lies in the methodological approach to the subject of their study. While a practitioner of Kelam takes the truth of Islam as his starting point, the man of philosophy, though he may take pleasure in rediscovery of the Quranic principles, does not make them his starting point, but follows a method of research independent of dogma, without, however, rejecting the dogma or ignoring it in its sources. I have actually found, after detailed tracking the methodology of philosophers, I can say that while the mutakallim starts from revelation, as I said, from God, in his background, in the background of his intellect, through reason, he understands nature. Philosophers go the other way around, from nature, through reason, to identify God or gods. It's two different approaches, two different opposite routes. I have talked about this in my book, Daqiq al-Kalam, the Islamic approach to natural philosophy. The book will be published, hopefully in 2 months' time, in a new edition, second edition, adding 100 pages to the book in 2 chapters, one about biological evolution. So, mutakallimun see no act Philosophers, attribute acts in the world to man and nature, while mutakallimun see no act of these entities is possible, since any act would need a will to be initiated. الفعل يحتاج إلى إرادة، والإرادة لا تتوفر في الجمادات. Philosophy in Islamic thought. Muslim philosophers mainly followed the Greek in their approach to understand physics and metaphysics, while the mutakallimun tried to construct their own genuine approach to understand the world and man through basics of the Islamic creed. Some people, some scholars, Arab scholars especially, may defend this and say no, Muslim philosophers had something new. They have added something new to philosophy. The only thing they added is trying to reconcile belief or Islam with philosophy. And in my opinion, they were not very successful in this approach. No real and genuine addition to the philosophical trend of the Greeks I can find within any of the original philosophers of Islam like Al-Farabi or Ibn Sina or Ibn Rushd. They were explaining Greek philosophy and trying to match it up, trying to show that it's not in conflict with Islam, including the belief in the eternity of the universe. Al-Kindi, for example, developed the basic philosophy, المعلم الأول in Islam, المعلم الثاني in philosophy, developed by then philosophical view was developed by Al-Farabi actually, and popularized by Ibn Sina. Later, this was normalized by Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd perhaps is the paramount, the utmost sophisticated philosopher who explained ما بعد الطبيعة, Aristotle's works, in much more accurate, because his resources were much more accurate. Some philosophers like Al-Farabi, as we all know, they were taking from Plotinus. Kelam is one genuine Islamic trend of thought, and it is the philosophical expression. We can put two commas at philosophical just to distinguish the word of its worldview, especially its ontological and epistemological, and metaphysical components. In its philosophical context, Kelam is a collection of concepts, assumptions, principles, and problems that were used to explain relationship between God and the physical world in accordance with the basics of Islamic creed. Through Kelam, Muslims developed their own philosophical worldview, which is rival to the Greek philosophy, and irrespective of some claims to attribute some of its notion, the Kelam notions, to the Greeks, the original Kelam remains to be solely an Islamic invention. Classically, Kelam was considered to form the foundation of jurisprudence, al-fiqh, usul al-fiqh. Proper usul al-fiqh comes from Kelam, And this we can see in the work of Abu Hanifa, no doubt. In the work of Abu Hanifa, we can see the Kalamic trend, the basic Kalamic trends, the early Kalamic trends, and arguments. Well, in this paper, I want actually, in this presentation, I want to mark 2 points. One, what Ibn Khaldun believed or said about late mutakallimun after al-Razi. Ibn Khaldun claimed that, well, this is the definition of Kalam, as you know, by Ibn Khaldun, in al-Muqaddimah. Ibn Khaldun claimed that mutakallimun after al-Razi, without specifying, except I think he mentioned al-Baydawi. He mentioned al-Baydawi by name, and his book Tawal al-Anwar, which was translated, I think, recently by Professor Elias Shelby. He said that these people, the after al-Razi, have muddled with Kalam, have made a mess with Kalam. When I go back and compare the dates, the duration where Ibn Khaldun is pointing to, it seems that he's pointing to Al-Iji, Al-Baydawi, whom he mentions explicitly, Amidi, possibly also Sharif al-Jurjani, because there is an overlap in the period. But not to the very late mutakallimun, Uthman mutakallimun, because he knew none of them. So perhaps, or let us say, most probably, Ibn Khaldun was accusing, this is this is the sentence I want to mention. The later scholars after Arazi were very intent upon meddling with the philosophical works. The subject of the 2 disciplines, theology and philosophy, were thus confused by them. The thought that there was one and the same subject in both disciplines, because the problem of each discipline were similar. He also said that the approach of the early Muslim can be reconciled with the belief of science of Kalam only if one follows the old approach of the theologians. Well, so this is what Ibn Khaldun says. This view I used to hold myself without making tahqiq, because Ibn Khaldun is Ibn Khaldun. And once I wrote an article and I mentioned that the mutakallimun after Razi were not so careful in their dealing with philosophy, and the referee for my paper said, either you have to prove this or you have to give me a reference. I didn't know that Ibn Khaldun mentioned this, so I was, looking for a reference, and I was lucky to see this exact sentence from Ibn Khaldun. I wrote it in my response, and the paper was immediately accepted. And this was wrong, because later I discovered that Ibn Khaldun is wrong, in my opinion. If we restrict what he said to his time and before that, then I think he's in error. If you go and look at the works of, as I said, Amidi, E.G., Taftazani, even Jurjani to some extent, Sharif, you would see that Ibn Khaldun was a bit harsh on these people. In fact, you will discover that Egypt, for example, is criticizing Al-Fakhr al-Razi for mixing some philosophical arguments in Kelam, or on 2 occasions. And I have, but I don't have the time to show you the Arabic wording, even it is in the Aegis and Mawaqif. I have it actually here in Arabic, even I have the whole sentence when he is criticizing Al-Fakhr al-Razi. And he's right. So I found in short that these scholars were very, very sincere to the message of original Kalam and even to the methodology. It's only that they have brought the argument of the philosophers to criticize it, to discuss it, to analyze it, that they brought the arguments of the philosopher and put it in their books. But they don't mean to publicize this or the argument. They had their own original Kalamic attitude, being sincere to the origin. However, I feel that postgraduate students may take this topic and study it in details, case by case, in order either to affirm what I'm saying, yeah, in details, or to refute it and say, no, this doesn't apply to such and such scholars of the late Mutakallim. Thank you very much.
Bize Muhammed Bazı Bey'e teşekkür ediyoruz. Eşari kelamcılığından öte tebliğini felsefe ve kelam mukayesesinden farklı bir boyuta taşıyarak İbn Haldun Fahrettin Razi'nin görüşleri üzerinden bu makaleyi daha ayrıntılı boyutlara çekti. Tebliğinin yazılı kısmını okuduğumuzda tartışmalarına daha net bir şekilde anlatılmak imkanı